Good morning or good afternoon, everyone who's joined us. We're glad you could attend the first in our series of webinars covering how to build a technical training program. So we're about to get started. Before we do, let me introduce myself and our speakers today. My name is Linnea Schulenberg, and I work on our Treehouse for Business marketing team. Joining us today are Londa Quisling, our Chief Product Officer, and Matt Moss, our Product Manager here at Treehouse. So they bring their many years of experience in the tech industry together to inform the structure, content, and tools that make up our training platform. Today, they're going to be talking to you about where to start building technical skills in your business outside of your development or engineering teams. And first, we'll start with a quick look at what we're covering. So first, we'll discuss why departments or roles that are usually considered non-technical actually need to be a priority for your technical skills development programs. Then we'll go through the 5 departments we think every business should begin training right away, and which topics each department can most immediately benefit from learning. And then last, we'll answer your questions, whether you submitted them via email beforehand, or if you think of them as we go through our presentation today. And if you do want to ask a question during the webinar, please use the question box in our meeting platform, or you're also welcome to submit them via email if you've dialed in using a phone today. And that email is ask@teamtreehouse.com. That's ask@teamtreehouse.com. Okay, Londa and Matt, take it away.
Great, thanks Linnea, and hello to everyone attending today. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you find the information we're going to share useful. I always like to start with the why. So let's take a moment to talk about why you need to start thinking about providing technical training to your employees, and especially those who aren't in obvious technical roles like development. You may already know that developers and other technical IT skills are in high demand and short supply. And in fact, I bet you may have several openings in your organization today that you're trying to fill, and you're really finding it difficult to find enough talented candidates. But what you might not know is that same set of technical skills are now necessary for your more traditional non-technical roles. In a recent study or survey report titled "The Digital Skills Gap in the Workforce," Burning Glass Technologies found that 78% of what they're calling middle skill jobs now require digital skills. And these jobs are growing 2.5 times faster than middle skill jobs that do not require digital skills. In another Burning Glass study, more than 250,000 job postings between April 2014 and March 2015 sought what Burning Glass is calling hybrid talent. That's a combination of traditional skills found in design, marketing, and data analysis, combined with more advanced technical skills like programming. And this trend toward hybrid skill jobs and demand for workers to fill these positions will only increase. In fact, demand for digital marketing skills has more than doubled, and data analysis skills has more than tripled over the last 5 years. So what does this mean for you and your business? I think all this is to say that the ever-expanding reach of technology in our lives and our businesses means that traditionally non-technical roles now require an understanding of tech tools and the ability to use digital skills to expedite work. The demand for technical skills for business-oriented roles is increasing dramatically, and these roles will become harder to fill as employees compete for skilled workers. The good news is that these employees in non-technical roles, they don't need to go back to school and get a second degree to become more proficient in the tech that they need for their jobs today. With accelerated learning programs like Treehouse, employees can gain the technical skills they need in a relatively short period of time. So now that we know why you should expand the circle of who in your company should have technical skills, let's talk specifics. Marketers, designers, tech support, product and project managers, and analysts, these are all roles that are rapidly becoming more technical. And giving them technical skills can make an immediate impact on speed, efficiency, and scope of the work that they and your business are able to accomplish. We're going to talk about each of these roles and give you some ideas and examples of which topics they should learn and why. So for that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to start us off.
Awesome. Thank you, Londa. So the first department we're going to talk about today is marketing. So you're probably familiar with at least a few of these roles on this slide. As the web continues to spread and become relevant to more and more aspects of running marketing communication in a company, we need marketers to help us do things like create emails and manage our website and social platforms, and really, in the end, be able to analyze data to make sure we're doing the right things to optimize various marketing funnels across the company. But to accomplish those tasks, marketers are being asked to leverage an ever-growing amount of digital tools. They need to be comfortable with technology and have a clear understanding of how different tools and tech can help streamline their work. So, giving your marketers basic training in any of these topics can make a huge impact for your business. So, for example, you can drastically reduce dependencies on creative and development for what can be considered really small changes. If your business has a website, for instance, that ever needs updated graphics, having a marketer that can use Photoshop or Illustrator to create and save those graphics in the correct format saves your designers time versus having to route that work through a creative department. Or if your business uses email marketing, there's a marketer on your team that could benefit from HTML or CSS training so they can create or edit the look of an email. I think the bottom line is putting the power to create those assets solely in the hands of marketers saves your dedicated web developers work, but it also allows marketers to test content designs more regularly so the business can scale faster. Now, just to hit home how important it is to make sure your marketing team is versed in the proper tech training, consider this next slide. These are just some of the tools I was talking about earlier. It's insane the number of tools and tech that have started to creep into the marketing space over the last few years. You can see there are hundreds of apps and tools and platforms and technologies here that could be used at different times depending on what piece of the marketing lifecycle you're actually in. So as a real-world example, one of our customers is a medium-sized company that provides a learning management system for the healthcare industry. Their inbound marketing manager wanted to get his small team up to speed in front-end development so they could create custom solutions for their website without having to be fully dependent on designer development teams, similar to the example I talked about earlier. So he assigned his marketers the front-end development track in Treehouse, and now 10,000 points later, they've gained HTML, CSS, and JavaScript skills that have noticeably helped his team in regards to their current projects, allowing them to work faster and more independently in their web work. Now, they're still primarily marketers, obviously, right? Like they're not full web developers, but they can now action some really cool and impactful changes to the company's website with the tech skills that they've gained. So the next role on our list is design. Now, the design role continues to evolve into an increasingly critical part of businesses today, especially for technology consumer companies. Design teams are being asked to do more and more. So like on one side, they're getting pulled into research and testing with customers early in the process of developing apps and websites. But on the other side, they're being asked to support the devs and development. So the first few roles here are the more common design roles, those that usually work with a marketing to define the visual look of a company and its website. But then towards the bottom, there are those design jobs that are specific to the more technical companies like UX or UI designers and product designers who create the look and feel of apps. Web designers and marketing designers are now expected to not just design, but we ask them to code emails and websites and be familiar with the impact design has on things like SEO and search rankings, and to be able to create designs that work well across both desktop and mobile computers. A lot of that work requires a good understanding of current web technology. So by giving your design team a foundation in things like HTML or CSS and JavaScript, plus some of the newer design tools out there, as well as common development process methodologies like Scrum or Agile, you're enabling designers to work smarter and faster. So another real-world example, one of our customers, HD Supply, wanted to upskill 12 of their print designers so they could translate their print designs over to the web and generally just take on more web design and code work. They tasked one of their current developers with creating a training program. So through Treehouse, he broke up training into 3 tiers, with tier 1 focusing on design tools, tier 2 on HTML and CSS, and tier 3 with simple JavaScript. So he was essentially just building up in complexity with each tier. Also using this tiered approach, it gave his print designers time to apply what they learned which we know at Treehouse is a critical part of just retaining information. So a lot of our customers use Treehouse to train their design teams, but we still think this is a huge opportunity that most businesses have yet to take advantage of. So the next role is a role I know a little bit about, product management and project managers. Many companies have project managers and account executives that work with cross-functional teams to move larger projects forward, whether it's a technical project or not. Product managers like me live in an intersection between qualitative and quantitative data, helping to identify what projects to invest in, then working with customers along the way to make sure we're building the right things. Now, throughout that entire process, we're usually working with what feels like pretty much everyone across the entire company, including engineering, support, marketing, and sales teams, to ultimately help take the product to market. Now, these roles call for a mix of technical and business skills. They rely on communication and presentation, along with the ability to understand the management of processes. Things like being able to perform user research, understand some of the technical work being done, and uncover opportunities for app integrations. So to help them move their teams and products towards successful deliveries faster, you can give them training to understand things like APIs, which is how different applications can work together, so you don't always have to build it all from scratch. You could train them in database languages like SQL, so they can pull in data without having to rely on dev help. You could also give them training in the fundamental tools and tech languages just used by your development, marketing, and design teams. We think any company, not just tech companies, can see benefits from giving their project or product managers more tech skills. So another real world example, Checkmate is a customer of ours that has seen a huge return on tech training for project managers. They're a web design and development agency. They needed all of their employees to be well-versed in tech, including roles that usually are non-technical, so that everyone on the team could contribute to projects. Because their designers and developers were generally pressed for time, the project managers began learning the fundamentals of web development and design. They learned things like how to export design assets, reducing the workload for the design team to help unblock work. Now, it saved the company time, but I think more importantly, it also created better communication across the board, with project managers able to more effectively understand how processes work in design and development. So the last department I'm going to talk about today before handing it off to Londa again is tech support. So if your company is anything digital that your customers need to interact with, you need a team of technically savvy, professional, and helpful individuals to interface between your customers and the development teams. Most of the tasks outlined here don't require your support teams to necessarily write code or do the actual programming, like documentation or onboarding, but they do require a good understanding of the technologies and programming languages that your company uses. The tech skills that will enable your support teams to be most effective are similar to those that product or project managers need to know for the same reasons. Whether you have a website that supports e-commerce or you have a highly technical app, knowledge of these technical topics helps support teams understand how different parts of the process work, how your products or apps are built, and really what could go wrong. So another real world example, MailChimp is a perfect example of how to leverage technical training specifically for support teams. They really believe in continuous education and have given everyone on their support teams Treehouse so they can learn the tech skills they need ad hoc. Now, the results of that ad hoc training have been better communication between their tech support and development teams. They now understand how the product is built, so troubleshooting and fixes actually happen faster. The picture on this slide is actually one we took when we visited MailChimp last year to just learn how they were using Treehouse. It's also allowed the company to create career development pathways for tech support employees who want to move into development roles. They've been able to gain junior development talent just by retraining internally, which has really benefited not just the company, but the product overall. I want to drive home how big a deal it is to create an internal talent pipeline like this. Tech support reps tend to be the employees who understand your product and tools better than almost anybody else in the company. And we've seen a lot of success with internal retraining programs just like this. So with all that said, I'm going to hand this last department over to Londa.
Great. Thanks, Matt. So finally, let's talk about analysts. Most businesses today are using data to make informed decisions. Whether you're a technical company or not, you likely have employees sitting within each of your departments who frequently work with data to create operational reports or perform some type of analysis. For instance, sales, well, they need to understand how they're doing against target quotas and forecast future projections. Marketing, well, they need to understand and measure funnel dynamics, analyze campaign take rates, and perform ROI analysis on new projects. We need finance to report on monthly cash flow and help us know how we're doing against budget to actuals. Product, like me, well, we need to understand customer engagement metrics. And these are just a few of the many ways we look at data to make informed decisions. Learning how to work with spreadsheets like Excel is essential to perform even the most basic analysis, and it could be useful for anyone on your staff needing to look at data. Teaching your analysts the best ways to visually show data trends with the correct use of charts and graphs can help your teams easily understand what the data is trying to tell them. Equipping your analysts with the knowledge and ability to access your data and your operational systems without the assistance of IT or development staff will eliminate bottlenecks and expedite decisions. And finally, if your analysts need to do more complex data analysis, learning to manipulate data with a language like Python and its robust data libraries will provide them with the tools necessary for the job. So I wanted to share our one last example of how one of our largest customers leveraged our Python curriculum, along with our custom tracks feature, to train their junior analysts and help prepare them for more advanced data analysis tasks. So we worked with them to build custom tracks that contained the most relevant Python content that they needed their analysts to learn. Every quarter, they selected a cohort of analysts and they assigned them to this custom track. And we know that by the end of the quarter, those junior analysts, many whom have never before programmed, had mastered their new skills, and the company felt confident to give them more advanced work. And just as Matt had mentioned in his last use case, they actually got a 2-for-1 deal because not only did they expand the capabilities of their junior analysts, they also created a career pathway for these junior analysts to be promoted into more advanced data science roles. Training and promoting from within is truly an added employee benefit and can have a huge, huge impact on employee retention.
Okay, so last, we should just mention development teams here, but in the context of retraining. So earlier, Londa touched on the fact that it's increasingly difficult to fill development roles. And one of the potential outcomes of cross-training the departments we just covered is that some of your employees may decide that they want to transition into development or technical work full-time. So Matt discussed one obvious version of that where tech support employees go on to join the development team. But really, any of the people in the departments we just talked about could be your next great developer hire. So many businesses now consider retraining the new recruiting. So rather than looking for new hires, you can train employees you already know and who already know your business in development skills. If you're interested in learning more about that or how training programs could be structured, how to manage cohorts, or just how to set learning goals, we'll be discussing all of that in more depth in the next 3 parts of our webinar series, which are on the screen here with dates for those upcoming sessions. So now that we're at the end here, we've got time for questions, and I'm just going to take a look to see what questions we had submitted ahead of time. So let's see here. We have Jim. Jim asks, what's your advice on getting executive teams on board with the importance of technical training? I think I'm going to hand this one off to Londa to answer.
Great, thanks, Linnea. Let me take a stab at that. So it's a great question, and I'm going to give you more general advice, but the first starts with you have to understand what the executives are looking for and speak their language. And that really frames it in context of benefits and outcomes. So, if I would break that down, I think the first is to identify the current challenges you face with without the appropriate technical training and what the impact is going to be on your team or the business if you don't do it. And then you need to link those problems to kind of overall business objectives and identify what it's costing you in terms of, things that execs care about: lost revenue, excess cost, lost efficiency, and so on. So then explaining what benefits you hope to achieve with the technical training and how you'll solve that current challenge, and how that's going to meet business objectives kind of frames it up in the benefits and the outcomes that you hope to get. And finally, if you have the ability to do this, explain how you're going to implement your training initiative and identify a budget and the resources needed and the implementation time frame. And if you can, frame it into a discussion on return on investment. So that's kind of a short breakdown on that. And I think, Linnea, that we might be covering some of that in future webinars.
Yes, so we will be covering in the next session sort of how to get buy-in from all the different stakeholders in your company. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, join us for our next webinar, which is in October. Okay, let's look at our next question. So Sarah asks, do you have some tips on implementing Treehouse so the teams you've outlined will be motivated to learn these new skills? And again, I think in our next webinar session, we'll be covering some of that, and especially in the last session in our series, we'll be talking about sort of structuring these training programs. But let's see what Matt thinks about incentivizing and motivating.
Yeah, so thanks, Linnea. I think when it comes to motivation, you can kind of break it into two parts. Some short-term motivation and long-term motivation. So short-term, I would focus on almost gamifying your implementation of Treehouse. So we support things like leaderboards, and we have point systems built into Treehouse, but what we see a lot of companies do is track progress in a whiteboard in the office. And you may turn it into a competition and have teams go up against each other, and whoever makes the most progress over a certain amount of weeks gets, pizza party, movie passes, whatever. And so that's kind of like some short-term motivational tactics. I think more importantly, though, we see long-term motivation tactics implemented around tying individual learning objectives to career growth plans or milestones. So if I need to get up to speed on JavaScript, I can review the progress I'm making towards that goal with my manager in my one-on-ones, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly. And then as I progress towards making those objectives or goals in JavaScript, I can be assigned projects that take advantage of those new skills. And I think that's hugely motivating to employees, because that's the whole reason they're taking that type of stuff. So I think breaking it up along those two lines, we usually see pretty good motivation if they're implemented that way.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Yeah, I would definitely appreciate a pizza party in celebration of some skills. So let's take a look at our next question. So Rob asks, how do we make the case for training in tech skills, given the risk that they may then leave with their new tech skills as more valuable employees in the job market? Londa, why don't you tackle this one?
Sure, I will do that, Linnea, thanks. There's a kind of old business joke or adage that, a CEO and CFO are talking, and they're talking about training programs, and the CFO says, well, what if we train them and they just leave? And the CEO turns around and says, well, what if we don't train them and they stay? And I think that's important in this conversation to kind of reframe it. And I think it's really kind of two components. What's the risks of not training your employees? And then what are the benefits of training them? And so if you look at, what are the risks of untraining, a lot of those could be, it takes longer to perform tasks. Employees have to rely on other departments to perform more technical aspects of the work, and the concept of how we've been framing the conversation today. It usually also results in less engaged employees if they aren't equipped to do their job or aren't motivated to progress. So if you look at the benefits of training, well, it helps employees get better at their jobs. But more importantly, it establishes a culture that you value learning and you value improvement, and you're going to invest in your employees. And this in turn can really be a great recruiting tool if people know that your company is all about a culture of learning, and it can be a great employee retention tool. And I believe it was Richard Branson that said, train people well enough so they can leave, but treat them well enough so they don't want to. And I think by providing a training program around technical skills could do just that.
Great, that's perfect. Okay, so our next question here is Jessica asks, you outlined 5 departments or roles that should learn these skills. Do you recommend training all 5 of them or one department at a time? Matt, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, so I'm going to take the product manager approach to this and recommend that you kind of just prioritize which department you want to teach just based off the needs of the company, right? So you want to identify which departments are probably leaning heavily on your dev team and see where you could gain efficiencies. You could also look at like which departments have large projects coming up, like website redesigns or preparing for a new feature release, and see if that helps you prioritize which departments you want to get trained up first. I think the important thing to remember, though, is that you just don't want to bite off more than you can chew. If you've never implemented a learning system or program within the company, you'll probably just want to pilot the program with a small group first, get some learnings and like get a better understanding of what works for you in the company, and then roll it out to more people and departments as you kind of figure out what works for you.
Great. Okay. So next question here is, should everyone in a department train in these skills? How do I choose who should be part of my training programs? Matt Moss, why don't you take this one?
Okay, so I think there's a huge motivating factor to groups of people taking it. I talked about that a little bit earlier, especially when you have a cohort of people going through the same content. They can ask each other questions. They're taking the same content so they can learn together, and that tends to motivate everybody. But if you're just rolling it out, we've found that many of our customers have success by starting with people who usually are the most motivated. So a lot of times we'll see our customers send out like an email or a poll saying, hey, we're thinking about rolling this learning program out. Let me know if you're interested in taking it. And everyone who responds, they actually will then interview those employees to get a better understanding of like why they want to participate and just generally gauge the motivation and true level of interest. You don't want to put like all this work into the program if the participants aren't as committed as you are. And so just kind of identifying through some of those techniques, I think, would be a great way to start.
Okay, so I've got our last question here, and I'm actually going to answer it. So the last question asks, does Treehouse just create training materials, or do you also help us choose what to learn, and or do you help us build our training programs? So those are both good questions, and the answer to both of them is yes. So our customer success team partners with Treehouse for business users, and they help them choose which technical skills or the programming languages to learn. And they also help them build out custom tracks when you need customized training plans. So we do partner with companies to do that. Our third webinar in this series will actually be covering how to create tailored training programs and how to use our custom tracks. But if you're interested in talking to someone on our team about learning goals and your learning goals specifically, you can definitely get in touch, and you can do that by either shooting me an email to that ask@teamtreehouse.com email, and I can pass it along to the right person, or you can use the contact form on our website, which is at teamtreehouse.com/business. Okay, so those are all of our questions today. Again, if you do have others that were not answered, since we're coming up right on our time today, you can send those questions to ask@teamtreehouse even after this webinar to get an answer. We do hope that you'll join us for the next part in our series, which will be covering how to align employee learning with company goals. And thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you in our next session.